So it's not the constitution that is a problem per se, but those that are supposed to interpret it and then administer it.
See, what we're saying is that people should be passionate about their job. We should have people that love this country. People say, you know what, we don't want the regulation of petroleum products. We want the subsidy to continue. We want our refineries to be prepared. But you go talk to somebody who runs or works in one of these refineries, they will tell you why those refineries can never work.
There is a present and real danger for the corporate existence of Nigeria. Generally, this government is considered as weak.
It should not be so. If we remain like that, then we will remain in socio-economic and political thraldom.
So when you talk about passion, the people ruling us, they are not passionate.
Well, let's take
the House of Rep is not passionate. The senators are not passionate. That's why they are discussing without doing anything. Which sacrifice are they going to offer?
In Nigeria, governance is not about servanthood. Governance in Nigeria is about what can I get.
Right here on the agenda again this week, giving you all the issues that relates and affects a Nigerian. If you're an average Nigerian, you're sure to have issues discussed on the agenda this week. We're going to be looking at a very interesting topic. Well, how have you been since we met last time? And this week, I promise you, we're going to be giving you something very, very, very interesting on the show. My name is Philip Haza. Yes, this is the agenda. If you're wondering, okay, is this your first time? Well, you can get all the feels of what is all about by going to www.loverplusnews.net. Check out the site. You can find a blog there and navigate and find out what exactly it's all about. And also you can participate on the show. All you have to do is send your comments and contributions right now on the show, and it will be read out loud even while the show goes on. The address is shown on your screen. And not further ado, I'll just introduce my guest, because I'm not alone on the studio or in the studio today. I have with me Mr. Okay, do I tell you to introduce yourself or not? Okay, well, I'll just make it open. He is a friend of the studio. He's a friend to the agenda. He's come here before, and he gives very, very credible information on the show. His name is Mr. Patrick Olisa Emeka. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you on the show.
Well,
Mr. Patrick is a business and public policy analyst. He is the MD CEO of Miss Beach Limited. All right, what are we going to be talking about today? It is a very important issue, like I said earlier on, and we're going to be moving towards the effective regulation of petroleum products in Nigeria. The effective regulation of petroleum products in Nigeria. Two keywords there, regulation and petroleum products. You know what impacts that petrol actually has in the country, and therefore it affects you, it affects me. We'll go straight to introduction of what this is all about. We know that the oil sector has greatly influenced the growth contour of the country since the 1970s. We all know how it all came about. If you're looking at the state of the economy, the first thing that comes to your mind is oil, because it is a huge contributor to the oil sector or to the economy. All right, now the first question, going a little with the background, the regulatory framework that governs the Nigerian oil and gas industry is still muddled up, we know. And then different institutions, including the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the National Oil Company, which is Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, the PPPRA. They have all been involved in one form of regulation or the other. How has this affected the product market? Let's, generally look at the market. All these agencies, how have they affected the product market?
Well, the various agencies, as it were, have been doing their own individual bits. But as an individual, I don't see them working in concert towards assisting Nigeria achieve a good petroleum policy. Why do I say this? If you take, for instance, what happened in the telecoms industry a while back, we had NITEL, MTEL, and all the other regulatory agencies regulating that sector of the economy. But it was privatized. And immediately the telecom companies like MTN, Econet, and the rest came on board. There was an improvement in the sector.
It was like a boom.
There was like a boom, yes. But it always existed. Now, I go back to the same issue. The NNPC, the PPRC are all regulatory agencies. But really, I don't think that government agencies are best equipped for running businesses.
Why do you say so?
Well, the world over, you would discover that any set of governmental agency assigned with responsibility of running any commercial or business-like enterprise always ends up in failure.
Is that a generic statement in Nigeria, everywhere in the world or in Nigeria
Well,
particularly?
generally in the world, but particularly in Nigeria.
Okay.
Particularly in Nigeria.
Okay.
You know what happened to the Nigerian Airways. We know what happened to MTEL, NITEL,
Yes.
and the rest. It's a trend. You at Jokuta Steel, you take any agency that can be profitable, that is run by government and government agency, they end up not being run like businesses. And that is probably because, to my mind, I think that when government runs businesses, they run it on a different set of parameters, different from how a businessman will run a business. If I were to run a business, I would be profit-oriented. I would not be ethnic in my decision-making. I would not be political in my decision-making. I would be very business-like in all that I do. But when government and governmental agencies run businesses, what tends to happen is there'll be political considerations. Should 50% go northwards or southwards or eastwards, then there'll be federal character. Let's have everybody represented, even when they're not all equally equipped to do what they're supposed to do. So immediately government goes into the business, into running a business such as the oil industry. Then already in the seed of that embryo, there's already a failure because it's inept. It's not equipped for doing that kind of thing. And so I think that there has generally been a failure on the part of NNPC, PPRA, and the rest who are supposed to regulate the oil industry because they don't do it as if it's a business. They do it as if it's something we have to do. I get my share, my neighbors get their share, and then in the consideration of making good policy, everybody's looking at what they can get out of it. They're Nigerians, and their interests are not business-like interests. Their interests are just political, ethnical, regional, you name it. So
not to the betterment of the country.
Not to the betterment
definitely.
of the average man on the street.
Okay, let's look at a contrast the contributions with the NNPC and the PPRA. Before we go, because we're dwelling on the PPPRA functions, because they are the ones that determine, the product pricing and all of that. Let's look at the contrast. NNPC, what is your contribution to this matter, the product market, and then we'll dwell on the PPPRA functions.
Okay, let's take NNPC. NNPC are supposed to be the ones, responsible for ensuring that the products are, mined or, taken out mined from the ground, refined and sold and, distributed. PPRA on the other side are pricing. You see, once you are not the one producing something and you're not the one buying it, but you're the one pricing it, already inbuilt in that platform, there's an artificiality in it. Okay? You cannot price what you don't produce, what you don't buy, what you don't. So already built into that system is already an inefficient system. There's a fault already.
Because they don't feel the pain.
Because they don't feel the pains. They don't bother about the arithmetics of how you arrive at. You say, okay, it costs us X naira to produce a barrel of oil. It's only the figures that NNPC gives them that they're going to work with. And if NNPC knows that giving them a higher figure would mean they will have a higher income, they're not going to declare the right figures to them.
So what you're saying is that the PPPRA, in the right sense, they're irrelevant to...
I believe they're completely irrelevant to the mechanism. And so it should not be, you shouldn't have a whole agency charged with, regulating the price of a product that they don't produce, they don't manufacture, they don't distribute, they don't do anything to. So it's, again, even then, that their existence in that system is already inefficient because you're going to be paying salaries for and allowances and housing and all that for people who are not really contributing effectively to the end value of the product that is delivered on the street in the pump price.
Okay, let's look at the functions of the PPPRA and then wrap up with that department before we move on. The Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, I know, is the agency that is charged with the determination of pricing petroleum products. They also, the pricing structure is based on import parity, pricing adjusted for cost of transportation, distribution, and marketing. We also know that the final price is a build-up of various components, which includes, like you mentioned, product cost, freight, lightering expenses, depot charges, financing. And then we also know that the difference between the PPRA determined prices and the government-regulated price yields the amount of subsidy per liter that the government incurs. So right now, with all these functions, really, what do you think about that department?
Again, the question is, do I agree as an individual that there is a subsidy?
And an affected Nigerian too.
Well, it does affect Nigerians, but I don't agree that government subsidizes petrol or petroleum in any way at all. All the arguments that are used for the subsidy, if you examine them critically, they fall on their heads because the price of petrol, if you compute it strictly based on how much it costs, to transport it and refine it and bring it on board in Nigeria, okay, the price will be very different. If you compute it based on the value of the dollar, for instance, okay, how much is dollar today and how much was it last week? Then you can begin to say, okay, because dollar was this today and it was that last week, therefore it's gone up by 3 cents. Therefore, because you're maintaining your price at 97 naira per liter, therefore government has subsidized by this amount of money. That's the rationale. But it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that because, for instance, if the fuel comes in and it's not moored on the high sea for a week or two, it's not incurring demurrages. Okay, if it's not incurring demurrage, then
so why?
Why
is the need for
you understand?
here?
So there are so many factors that go into the pricing of the product.
And they're not fixed.
They're not fixed. They're not fixed parameters. And so when people talk about subsidy is a language that I believe government wants to use to justify increasing the price of fuel. It's not really as if there's actually any subsidy. I mean, they've been removing this subsidy pricing for the past 15, 20 years, and we're still being told that we're being subsidized. So I don't buy that argument at all.
Okay, before we go into fuel subsidy, we're still looking at petroleum distribution and the product market. Let's look at this angle. In line with the recommendations of the National Oil and Gas Policy, the current Department of Petroleum Resources, which is widely known as DPR, should be restructured into an autonomous regulatory agency, which is to be renamed as Nigerian Petroleum Inspectorate. Will this restructuring aid the regulatory environment? Do you think it will? Yes,
it would, if it's not just a change of name. A change of name, you can call it anything and then say, okay, we've restructured it and it's now a new body. If it's a serious restructuring, which means you're going to define what they're supposed to be doing, and then you're going to arm these people with the ability to perform. I'll give you an example. You walk into a gas station right now, and it says that the pump price is 97 naira per liter. Okay? And you buy your fuel at 97 naira per liter, and you drive away. You have no way of knowing whether you've actually paid 110 or whether you have paid 97. Why do I say this? I drive a vehicle. Sometime last year, I drove into a fuel station and I wanted to fill up my tank. I was almost empty when I drove in. The capacity of my fuel tank from the manufacturer says 75 liters.
Okay.
By the time they finished putting the fuel in my car, I was being charged for 85 liters.
Including the reserve, everything?
Including the reserve.
It's supposed to be 75 liters.
75 liters.
Well, you ended up paying
for 85 liters.
Wow.
And I said to the attendant, no, I'm not going to pay this amount of money because this tank can only take 75 liters.
You're sure the tank is not adjustable?
I know it's not adjustable because it's not a plastic tank, it's a metal tank.
Wow. Okay.
And it's a new car. We've never had to take out the engine, I mean the tank. So it came the way it was manufactured and calibrated. So I said, no, I'm not going to pay this. And we had a long argument. What I'm trying to say, therefore, is that the fact that you see 97 naira per liter
on the reading
doesn't mean that the fuel is being dispensed at 97 naira per liter. there could be adjustments to the meter by the station operator, upwards or downwards, but usually downwards, to make sure that they fleece you.
More profit.
Okay. Now, these are the areas that you expect the regulatory agencies to be more ardent at trying to regulate, make sure that the tanks or the fuel pumps actually dispense the right amount of fuel as per what it states there. But you see, there are many ways that Nigerians are being fleeced. Yeah? And if the agencies that are charged with this responsibility are not up and doing in doing their in discharging their responsibility, then you discover that you can talk about fuel subsidy from various angles. Now, I've given you one scenario. So they could say, yes, I'm being charged 97 naira per liter for the fuel that is going to my car. But effectively, because I'm not getting 75 liters into that car, I'm being told I'm paying 85 liters.
Yes.
The arithmetic has changed.
So they have 10 liters to themselves.
They have 10 liters to themselves.
Wow.
So you see, these are the arguments that make me believe that, you know what, it's not so much creating a new agency. It's actually getting these agencies to do the jobs that they've been established to perform. Okay? Let them go out there and make sure that the pumps in all the filling stations are dispensing accurately. And you know that what happens, you know, when our people have to go and do this, there's always the case that the station manager or the owner of the gas station is going to, as it were, see the people, the regulators,
to motivate
them to look the other way around. And so, actually, these are the human factor that exists. But that notwithstanding, I believe that the agencies can do their jobs without actually allowing the vagrancies of our economy or of our society to affect the performance of their job.
Okay. All right, if you're just joining us, you're still watching The Agenda right here, and we're coming from you live from Lagos, Nigeria, Level Plus Studios. All right, we've been looking at the effective regulation of petroleum products in Nigeria. A very interesting topic, and I've been talking to Mr. Patrick. Mr. Patrick has given us a lot of revelations in this sector. All right, let's take a look at the next question. You can don't forget, I was just reminded that you can be a part of this show by sending your comments, contributions, what you feel. You're definitely affected as a Nigerian. Wherever you are in this part of the world, you are affected by the prices. Even if it's a naira increase in the price of fuel, you are definitely affected. So you need to send your comments and contributions. You might be surprised. Someone respected, they're supposed to listen to this, will pay attention to it. All right, let's go back to the topic of the day. The oil subsidy issue is still coming up strong in the petroleum sector. Do you think the partial removal of the subsidy regime, since we're already talking about fuel subsidy, has actually worked for the Nigerian government? You know, considering the fact that marketers have been agitating for the subsidy funds, which, if not paid, will hamper their importation of petroleum products. You know, what is your reaction on this vexed issue?
Well, you see, the marketers have an interest in receiving money, whether it's called subsidy money or whatever it is. They have an interest in getting that. Like I said earlier, I don't personally believe that there's any subsidy anywhere.
Okay.
And the shroud of subsidy only exists because these things are not in private hands. Regulation is not in private hands. What if government said to all the oil companies in Nigeria, to Shell, to Mobil, to, you know, Ajip or whatever you call them, Oando and everything. I say, okay, everybody, go buy your fuel, import your fuel, okay? Sell it at your optimum price.
Is that like the removal of fuel subsidy that was supposed to occur in January?
Yeah, so just remove it completely and say, okay, sell at your optimum price.
So what you're saying is at January, you were not part of the Occupy Nigeria that were against
I was very much a part of it. I was very much a part of it.
So is it that now you're getting to the fact that really they should have taken it out?
No, I have always believed that there was no subsidy.
Okay.
And therefore, you cannot remove what does not exist.
Okay, that's your argument.
That's my argument. Okay. You're not removing what doesn't exist. All I'm saying is change the way you view it.
The systems,
okay, the system that enables you to think that you have a subsidy. Okay, so you're not going to have any subsidy. Government is not going to pay a dime to anybody, but enable all the companies that are importing fuel to import their fuel, sell at your own price. Okay,
so there's competition.
And let competition determine if Oando or one, let me say a company A says I'm selling my fuel at 150 naira per liter. and company B says I'm selling at 130, then leave the
Market
public,
determines.
let the market forces determine it. At the end of the day, we may start off very high, which I believe, and then competition will begin to allow things to settle down, okay? And things will continue to settle down until we get to an optimum price that will equate supply and demand.
Because right now in some parts of Nigeria, it is 150 per liter,
Exactly.
which should have been around the price if the in quotes, subsidy was taken out.
Yeah, because they're still inputting the subsidy effect, okay? So how come in some places like Lagos, maybe Abuja, it's 97? Because there's regulation and there's enforcement.
Enforcement.
Okay? In some areas, maybe outside those areas, the enforcement is not so steep, and so people take laws into their own hands and price differently. But I'm saying allow the market forces to determine the price of petroleum products that you pay at the pump price, which means if you have 5, gas stations near where you live, you look at the one that is selling at the best price, you drive in there, and you soon discover that everybody is driving into the most price-effective station.
Sure.
And what do you think the other people are going to do? They're going to adjust their pump prices, okay, so that they can compete.
To get more customers.
Get in more customers. And the more this happens, we will ultimately get to an equilibrium, a point at which people are buying, the petroleum product at a price that is not exorbitantly profitable, and at the same time, government is taken out of the whole headache of whether they are subsidizing or not subsidizing.
Okay. We need to pause. We need to take a break. We have a reaction from Mazi Okechukwu Onegbu. He actually gave us his views on this issue towards, the petroleum, products, petroleum distribution and deregulation and all of that. We talked to him. We need to find out what his view is on the effective regulation of petroleum products. Let's take a break now, and we'll join Mazi Okechukwu Onegbu for his comments. Stay tuned.
Honestly, it's sad for me to comment on it because this is all based on corruption. Corruption is a very difficult term to define, but what you see in the petroleum sector, in other sectors, even in the religious sector, is just corruption. Something you do, you know it is wrong, you keep doing it, and you know you are hurting some other people. So it's corruption is the problem. There's no other thing, because people have been so used to making big money for nothing, depending on rent collection from petroleum products. They think they want to continue to do it. And this is where people are now shouting, we cannot allow this to continue. That is why you see this happening. Some of the oil marketers who are genuine marketers are affected. And all of them seem to be the same. It's a problem. While some have been doing it and they want it to continue, and because it's not continuing, this is what you see playing out in the oil sector that we are all suffering for. It's just like the drug war in Colombia. And those people are trying to overthrow the government in Colombia, the drug cartels, because they are so very wealthy that they can finance anything with the money they make illegally. The same thing is happening here. It's most possible and it's likely or probable that some of the oil cartels are funding some of these things so that government will say, oh, all right, and we keep on paying subsidy we are not supposed to pay. This is basically what is happening. And like I said, it's all based on that indefinable word, corruption.
Well, you heard it all for yourself, Mazi Okechukwu there. What could you say about his comments? Were you able to get any thing you could want to ponder upon?
Yes, I agree with him 100%.
Okay.
In the sense that, without really having to elaborate on what he said, but basically everything is centered around dishonesty and corruption. There is no way take for instance, the president came up and said to us they want to remove the subsidy. At that time, there was a lot of agitation. I wish a lot of Nigerians knew the numbers. They would have probably agreed with him that time in December and said, let's remove this subsidy so that everybody can go home and government is not paying money to anybody. But because there was insistence that we're not going to have it removed, because Nigerians have been made to believe one way or the other that government actually does subsidize fuel, and it is in our interest to continue to receive this subsidy, from government. Okay? Now, we've discovered that, yes, government has actually been subsidizing, but not the average man has been getting this money. It's been a group of people who have been collecting this money.
Who determined cabals.
The same cabal. So I say, look, remove everything. Let's just all go the way we are. And then let the cabal now have to put their hands in our pockets and forcefully take the money out, which will be more difficult than filling a few documents and passing it to government, and governmental agencies will give you the rubber stamp, and then they pay in billions of naira into your account, which is really, a different
before it's pushed down our throats, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. Well, there was a reaction from Minister of Petroleum in this line that we're going. She blamed the pervasive corruption in the petroleum sector on fuel subsidy. She was responding to assertions of discussants at a lecture in honor of Nigeria's 52nd anniversary in Abuja recently. Do you think she has a point there, blaming the pervasive corruption in the petroleum sector on fuel subsidy?
Well, she has a point, but I don't think it's only the petroleum subsidy.
Okay.
It's not only the petroleum industry. It's in almost every area of our national life. It's not just the it's not only the petroleum industry that is corrupt in Nigeria. I mean, the extent of corruption is mind-boggling. If you imagine what's happening there. I mean, if crude that is under the ground is being piped, and we have vessels, ocean-going vessels, are taking out this crude in hundreds of thousands of liters every day. There's police, there's Navy, there's customs, there's NNPC. Everybody is supposed to ensure that the national reserves of Nigeria is kept intact. But with all these agencies there, these things are being stolen every day. So you then ask yourself, how does it happen? How does it happen?
Everyone has to.
There's a lot of corruption.
Everyone has to be a part of it.
Everybody's a part of it. So there's a lot of corruption.
Yes.
And it's an institutionalized corruption.
Wow. Almost legalized.
It is institutionalized.
It's institutionalized,
because there's no way you can tell me that the Navy did not know that ocean-going vessels, we're not talking about insects on the sea. We're talking about big barges, big vessels carrying millions of liters, okay? Nobody sees them. Our Navy doesn't see them.
Wow.
Our Air Force don't see them. Our Army don't know anything about it. The NNPC, who turns on the pipe for them and allows them to flush the thing into, nobody knows. And yet every single day we are told, every single day by government admission, that every single day thousands of liters are freighted away.
Wow.
And you say it's not institutionalized, and you say government doesn't know about it. I think from top to bottom, there's a lot that the average Nigerian on the street does not know about.
Well, let's look at the rules now, because the whole process of regulation in the industry suffers from an absence of clarity of rules. Let's look at those institutions again, taking a look at NUPENG. NUPENG is also assuming its own powers with its constant threats of embarking on industrial strikes and actions when its demands are not met by the government. This also disrupts product supply, we know. Even with the signal that they are going to embark on a strike, before you know it, there's a shoot up in the prices of these products. What do you think? What do you say about this?
Well, in every economy, workers have a right to form themselves into a union or into an association, okay? And it's a good thing that NUPENG exists, because it also serves as a checkmate on the excesses of management of the petroleum industry, okay? But having said that, they themselves are beginning to, as it were, overdo it.
Okay.
That's where I see they're beginning to overdo it. Overdo it in the sense that it's not everything that happens that because you don't have your way, you call a strike. It must be effective. It must be constructive. It must, at the end of the day, you must sit yourself at the end of the day, am I just doing this because I want more money? Or am I doing this because it's going to be in the interest of the general population of Nigeria? And I think if you take it from that perspective, all the actions have not been altogether altruistic. They've been a lot of self-interest around it.
Those threats.
And I think the leaders of those associations, those unions, call themselves together and understand that they're not the only ones that are Nigerians. And so it is not also proper to continue to hold everybody to ransom. But having said that, who's to blame them? Well, I read in the papers today that members of our House of Assembly are asking for 7 million naira rise in their allowances.
Wow.
Now, when you hear that and you work in Nupeng and you can also feel that I can get my own from this, would you think twice?
Especially as a major contributor to
Exactly.
the economy.
Would you think twice when members of the House of Rep are asking for 7 million naira a quarter extra, when we have not been able to approve and actually pay 18,000 naira to the average man, minimum wage to the average man on the street? They're asking for 7 million naira extra. So would you blame members of Nupeng if they now decide, well, you know what, this is like, you know what, dog eat dog. Let me just get whatever I can get out of this system. And that's what's happening.
That's what's happening. Okay, let's look at the issue of vandalization of petroleum products pipeline, which is another major aspect that actually borders prices of the products. Is another issue that causes disruption, definitely, of supply of petroleum products. And well, it was experienced recently in a Repo pipeline in Ogun State, where, in fact, some officials of the NNPC, when they went to repair the pipelines, they were killed. You know, how do you think this can be properly dealt with to prevent any weak link in the availability of products, petroleum products?
You know, it's strange that we live in this kind of times. I say this because you cannot have sanity amidst insanity. Okay? We want people not, I'm not advocating that it's right for people to vandalize pipelines, but sometimes people are pushed to the point when they don't have any other thing to do.
Yeah.
You have a lot of graduates who are unemployed, they don't have a job to do. Maybe some of them are married and have children and have families, and they are supposed to be responsible for them, and they don't have a job. That's not a recipe for them to then go and do what is legal. But then when you're operating a system where everything systematically is not going well, okay, there are no jobs, there's no employment, there's no possibility of you even creating one, then what you need people to do is begin to do all the negative things in society. And it made worse when our leadership is not seen to be fair, when our leadership is not seen to be clean, when our leadership is not seen to be effective in terms of administering the resources that are available to the nation, to the economy. When it is too lopsided, then people begin to think and say, you know what, I know this is wrong, but you know, senators are getting this amount of money, this is getting this, NNPC, all subsidy thieves are not being, nothing is happening to anybody.
And this
There's
is our
no
right.
sanction.
It's supposed to be for us.
This is supposed to be everybody's own, and these guys are just taking their share. Why don't I go and take my share? It's wrong, but that's where it's leading us to, because he who must go to the court of equity must go with clean hands. If government wants people not to vandalize pipelines, not to do all those kind of things, then government must provide effective and transparent leadership.
I was speaking to someone that actually works in NNPC by Elsa, and I was wondering, you know, because that pipeline was vandalized when they sent the officials and they were killed. According to him, that affected the supply, because at the end of the day, no official wanted to go and repair the pipeline. I was wondering, we have security agencies. Were they exposed? That's talking about the victims now of that attack. Were they exposed, you know, to just go and repair the pipelines, and they were overpowered, you know, by the forces of, you know, that were around that environment?
Well, we can, right now we were not there. So we can only speculate. But if I can imagine the way we do things in our country, I would assume that it's possible that those people went without security cover. Okay, maybe they didn't go with military men and whatever, adequate security to ensure that they do their job. But really, in a society where everything is going wrong, even the security cover that they would have been given, maybe if they don't pay the right price, they would not get effective security cover.
Or someone can chuck some part of the money.
Exactly,
and,
you know,
pay for cheap security.
And pay for cheap security. So I don't know what kind of security they had, if they had any, and if they didn't have any, why would you go to such a volatile place, you know, without being adequately prepared for the eventualities of what is going to happen?
Okay, we're going to take a look at the PIB bill very soon. Let's look at the impact of this bill to still the regulatory of petroleum products and supply in the country. But then before that, we need to take a break and get another comment this time, still from Mazi Okechukwu, and find out another view, but still related to the topic, which of course is towards the effective regulation of petroleum products in Nigeria. So stay tuned. This is still the agenda. We'll be right back.
Will is lacking, and we always are afraid to say the truth. When you start talking, they say you are confrontational, and because when they label you confrontational, you don't get anything done. You don't even yourself, you cannot even move freely in the street. Even those that believe in what you are saying cannot even put you into positions to be able to do things that is not to change the course of events. So the will for me, for some of us, is that the people don't have the will. And if you try it, you'll be knocked off. That is, everybody's afraid to die. And I keep telling people that if you are fighting a just cause, it may be difficult to kill you, but if they kill you, your spirit will live on. Because if you see what the U.S., what they're enjoying today was the suffering made by their forefathers. The younger ones now are not even working as their forefathers worked. So the system has been built over the years. Our people do not want to build such a system because they don't want to die. There's no way they cannot die anyway, because it's unfortunate that things are happening this way. So when you fear yourself so much, you might find that in a very short time, you are no more here. And all that thing you accumulated will go to waste, and people will suffer because of your action or inaction. This is what we are facing. It's not that the minister or the president cannot do it. There is a palpable low will to perform and do things for the benefit of majority of our people.
All right, you're still watching The Agenda. That was Mr. Mazi Okechukwu there. We had to join him to get his view and comment on the recent state of regulation of petroleum products in Nigeria. Well, if I was to deduce anything from what he said, he focused more on the system and our mode of attitude towards, actions in government parastatals, and how to deliver and be diligent to your duties for the sake of, your generation and all of that. Well, news coming in right now says that tank farm owners have given the federal government a 24-hour ultimatum, to remove security operatives from integrated oil depot owned by former Minister Iheanacho. Okay. And before we went on that break, we're already looking at vandalization of pipelines and all of that. Now, on to this. It looks like it's increasing by the second or by the minute.
Yeah, that's, one of the things we're just talking about.
This is huge.
And really, who has the responsibility for securing the tank farms? I think it should be the business of the owners of the tank farm. Okay. If I own any asset, I should be the one that should be securing it, okay? Which means I employ security personnel to ensure that my assets are properly protected. Now, when you have third parties providing you with security, then you have a problem. You have a big problem.
So it's like, what's the government, agencies, what are they doing there when the tank farm is supposed to be owned privately?
Exactly. If it's owned by private,
If it was owned by private owners.
Exactly. So then leave it as private. Let private people secure their property. It's not government's business. So if they're asking them to leave the place, I think they have a point. Well,
but if it's linked with bunkering products, as a result of accusation, I think that's why.
Wait until they break the law.
Okay.
Then at the point they break the law, you apprehend them.
But there were bunkering activities going on according to the reports. Don't you think that's
If there are bunkering activities, then you adduce evidence. And then based on the evidence, don't just close down the whole place. Okay? Don't just, send security men to go there, or, whatever. I'm not fully appraised about that situation, but what I'm trying to say is that if they have broken the law, let them face the law. There are laws and there are provisions within our law to handle such things. Okay?
The former minister, Iheanacho, was arrested, and
it doesn't matter who he is.
Released now.
It doesn't matter. He could be former minister, it could be former president. Once we learn to ensure that people, regardless of their status in society, okay, obey rules and regulations, obey laws of the land, then we would not have all this issue, whether he's Iheanacho, whether he was former Minister
whoever.
for Petroleum, or whether he was Inspector General of Police, or whether he was former President. He's a human being. He's a Nigerian. He's operating in Nigeria. He must obey the laws of Nigeria. Simple.
Simple.
It is for our legal system, for our law enforcement, for us to ensure that sanctions, that when people cross that line, they are appropriately sanctioned.
No matter who they are.
Position, regardless of their position. It is because we are good at making laws, we are good at making proposals, we are good at, but we're never good at enforcing and sanctioning people that go wrong. We talked about all sorts of things for a long time. How many people have been effectively, charged or jailed? Nobody.
All right now we're on PIB. Like I said, we're going to talk about that after the break. Let's look at the legislation, the PIB, which was drafted in December 2008. This is 2012, 4 years after. First of all, I think we should look at the bill to see one after the other what it provides. The first point now, it says it provides a legal and regulatory framework for the Nigerian petroleum industry. It also seeks to establish guidelines for the operation of the upstream and downstream sector of the petroleum industry. Now, this bill, is this supposed to improve the state of regulatory of petroleum products in the country? And if it is supposed to improve, how come it has passed the second reading and up till now it hasn't been passed formally?
Well, you and I know that it's supposed to be a good thing. Okay? Because it provides a legal framework and also the basis for regulation of all the activities in the industry. But the issue is there a willingness for these regulations to see the light of day? And if there's no willingness, why is there an absence of willingness? Why is it that 4 years later, we're still on the second reading? Because for the powers that be, they don't want those things to materialize. They don't want those regulations. They don't want those legal framework put there. They want everything to continue to remain in the haphazard manner that they have always remained, so that you can come and do your own and go away, and I come and do my own and go away, and Mr. X comes and does his own and goes away. If government has the will, if our legislators, and the members of the House of Assembly, if they have the will and the interest of Nigerians at heart, we should not be at the second reading by now. When they want to, change their own salaries,
they have a way of
effecting them within a very short time. It comes to be.
Yes.
When they have a constituency agenda and they have a way of threatening to impeach Mr. President if he doesn't, release capital. So, it's because there is no interest. I mean, people just go there for what they can get, and because they're all the major players in those areas anyway, they don't want it regulated. That's my understanding and my reading of it.
Okay, I know that the bill also looks at, it provides for community development in the petroleum producing areas of the states and the federation generally.
Yes.
As long as there's an oil block somewhere or a company that is producing there, it's supposed to better the state of the community, develop them also through the implementation of specific projects which are aimed at ameliorating the negative impacts of petroleum activities. This is also supposed to be a plus by the bill.
Yes.
And what's your reaction to this?
Well, you see,
especially where we have
we're not short of policies.
Yes.
We're not short of ideas in Nigeria. And I dare say that this bill is well intended and has very good, it's well intended. But the issue is it's not likely to see the light of day at the end of the day. Why? Because there are many contending forces that would want to kill this kind of activity. Okay?
Does that include the companies that even produce in the country?
Why
Are they
not?
affected by the
if you say, for instance, that the companies have to also invest in the communities, and they're not really keen on investing in those communities, but rather taking away from those communities, they will play the political game. Okay? And they'll make it so difficult. They'll tell you that there's no enabling environment. It's so difficult to do this. They'll come up with 1,001 excuses why it cannot be done. But if there's a profit motive for them, that, if you invest 1 billion naira in that environment, government is going to give you back, maybe 1 billion plus.
Or
you
an
see
extra
that
block
all of them,
something.
or extra block, you see all of them will be ready to do
Motivated
it.
to do something.
So the issue is that you know, they are so heartless, you know, and nobody considers the degradation that happens in all those oil-producing areas. It's a lot of degradation. In the waterfront, they cannot fish, they cannot do a lot of things because, you know,
the activities.
Because of the activities. Where they're supposed to farm, they cannot farm because there's a degradation. And really, it is right and proper, and it's a provision that every, you know, person that operates in such an area should put back something in that area, because what you're taking out is also adding to the degradation of that area. And so it's a very well-intended bill, but whether at the end of the day, 4 years on, maybe next 8 years from now, we'll probably still be talking about the good intention of this bill, because it's not likely to come to be.
Because of the selfish interest.
Because of the selfish interest of the powers that be.
All right, very quickly, I think we've already come a long way on the show. Just give us your last contribution, since we're looking at the regulation of petroleum products in Nigeria, and right now there's a lot of scarcity in several parts of the country. What do you think can be done immediately, you know, to curb this proliferation of scarcity everywhere or in most parts of the country?
Well, do I say increase supply? But if supply is not something you can increase overnight. Okay. Do I say go to the oil depots and force them to begin to release products? Or do I say Nupeng start, you know, it's multifarious.
Okay.
But really, at the end of the day, I think what we should be talking of as a nation is, do we want a good society? If we want a good society, both the workers in the oil industry, you and I, every one of us, should be working together and focusing on how we can make this resource that we have today as a nation, that God has given to each and every one of us, how can we ensure that Nigerians maximally benefit from this natural resource? And if it means that government has to create more refineries, why not? In fact, it is absurd that we don't have refineries working. It's completely absurd. We're dealing with petrol every day. I mean, we're importing and importing and importing, and at the detriment of our nation. So I think what government should do, it may not be something we can do immediately. Overnight, but there must be a long-term plan for us to establish enough refineries in Nigeria so that our petroleum products can be refined here, distributed here, utilized here, and then whatever we have as excess, we can begin to export and get away from all these subsidy issues.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patrick. Well, I've been talking to Mr. Patrick Olisa Emeka. He is indeed a business and public policy analyst. He's the MD CEO of Miss Beach Limited. Thank you once again for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Well, if there is anything to deduce from what we've been talking about, you can also send your contributions and reactions. Don't forget to agenda@loverplusnews.net. Well, I feel that the oil sector has influenced significantly the growth contour of the country since the 1970s, and definitely we need a structured formula. We need to also allow the supply chain to be competitive, and that's going to actually increase and improve the sector, deregulation and distribution of petroleum products, whatever name you want to give it. But I know that it's going to actually improve and better the lives of average Nigerians that actually participate with the pricing regime of our products. Well, you've been watching The Agenda on Lover Plus. My name is Philip Ihaza. I hope you had a good time on the show. You can still do this by sending your comments. Don't forget, let's know how you feel, what your reactions are, because you are affected by all these issues in the country. We'll hope to join you same time next week with another interesting topic. And I know that, sure, when we come back, we'll do it better than we did today. Thank you so much for joining us, and bye-bye for now.
So it's not the Constitution that is a problem per se, but those that are supposed to interpret it and then administer it.
See, what we're saying is that people should be passionate about their job. We should have people that love this country. People say, you know what, we don't want deregulation of petroleum products. We want the subsidy to continue. We want our refineries to be prepared. But you go talk to somebody who runs or works in one of these refineries, they will tell you why those refineries can never work.
There is a present and real danger for the corporate existence of Nigeria. Generally, this government is considered as weak.
It should not be so. If we remain like that, then we will remain in socio-economic and political thraldom.
So when you talk about passion, the people ruling us, they are not passionate.
Well, let's take
The House of Rep is not passionate. The senators are not passionate. That's why they are discussing without doing anything. Which sacrifice are they going to offer?
In Nigeria, governance is not about servanthood. Governance in Nigeria is about what can I